Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our regular community development meeting, and it is a public hearing. It is September 8th and about 9:04 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks and Duncan. And Sandy, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you. I do not have any opening remarks, except that we do have 3 public hearings going on today, and so I think some of the people signed up didn't necessarily indicate which public hearing they're for, so please bear with us as we get through that. Are there any changes to the agenda? All right, hearing none. Polling for conflicts of interest?
No.
None. And we will go ahead with our first public hearing, which is ZON 21-0002, Kellner Zone Change. And this is a second hearing. And Amy?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you. So yes, this is for a zone change from agricultural to rural. Before I get started, I did get additional public comment that I'd like to submit. I don't know if you guys want to read them all.
Are these copies or just,
They're
oh, here, give this to Leslie first and let her.
Sure.
That'll be B1001.
All right. So the parcel is approximately 50 acres. It is located south of the city of Coeur d'Alene in an area commonly known as the east side of the lake on a peninsula west of Neachin Bay. Access to the parcel would be from Hauser Road, which intersects Highway 97, which travels around the northern boundaries of this peninsula. And Hauser Road is right here. This is where their access point will be. The parcel is currently developed with a single-family residence and accessory structures. It is adjacent to the Hauser Ranch Golf and Lake Club PUD. There is an easement across the neighbor's property for their access. The applicant's proposal is agricultural to rural. In their narrative, they did describe an intention to subdivide the parcel into 4 lots, which would be a minor subdivision in the future if they choose to apply, and they also wish to establish a golf course. The purpose of the application, of course, is zone change. Future applications, as I said previously, would be needed for a subdivision and the golf course, or any future uses that require a CUP or special notice permit. And as I mentioned previously, it's adjacent to the PUD, but it is not within the PUD boundary. The parcel is agricultural. That's that deep green color. It is surrounded by restricted residential, shown in the yellow, and rural, shown in the orange. The applicants wish to rezone to rural, which is a lower density than restricted res. It is the only agriculturally zoned parcel in the area. The closest is approximately 3 miles southwest as the crow flies. According to the comprehensive plan, it has a land use designation as country. The primary purposes of the country designation is to promote open space, agricultural activities compatible with residential development, promote residential subdivisions for residential and non-residential uses, promote economic activity that minimizes environmental impacts and does not require a full range of services. So that are the primary purposes of the country designation. Here are some photos provided by the applicant, just shows some aerial views in the existing driveway. During the public agency comment period, there was no opposition. The applicant has provided an approach permit to the highway district. Agencies will primarily focus on impacts when we have a specific use in mind. During the public comment period, just a summary of trying to capture all the concerns. They range from spot zoning to not being compatible with land use or the comprehensive plan, traffic, and other items such as water and sewer, impact on the neighborhood and wildlife, evacuation concerns if there's a fire, nuisance, and potentially a major subdivision instead of a minor subdivision. For staff's analysis, the applicant did meet all the application requirements. Staff feels it is compatible with the surrounding zoning and land use because it is directly adjacent to both types, rural and restricted res. The applicants want to rezone it rural. It is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The hearing examiner does agree. It's not considered spot zoning. Again, it's the only agriculturally zoned parcel in the area. Agriculture and rural zones do have very similar uses. The major difference between the agricultural and rural zone is agricultural prohibits subdivision. Separate applications are required for, again, future uses or a subdivision. The parcel, a little bit of trivia, it had been rezoned restricted res in 1973 when there was a major rezoning across the entire county. The owner at the time opted to be returned back to agricultural in 1973, that same year. And just for additional information for spot zoning, in order for it to be considered spot zoning, it has to meet one of these three criteria. The first one, it is not a small parcel, so it doesn't meet that first one. Staff finds that it is not singling out this parcel for a specific use that is not compatible with the surrounding area, and it is compatible with the comprehensive plan. According to the hearing examiner, which there was a hearing held on May 5th, 2022, according to their recommendation, they recommended approval. Their major findings is that the current designation of agriculture is inappropriate for the area. Rural has a lower density than restricted res. It's compatible with the present and expected uses. Adequate infrastructure is available, and it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. On July 14th, the Board of County Commissioners did hold a hearing as well. There was a motion to approve the request. There was a majority of denial. When that happens, according to our code, we are obligated to hold a second hearing, which is why we're here today. So that, according to our code. Here's a map, and I also have a slide, if it helps the board, of required findings for the approval of a zone change, in case this is helpful to you. Otherwise, I stand for any questions that you might have. And also, I can also pull up any zoning code if you need me to. Land use tables might be a helpful document, if that's something you want to see. Otherwise, I stand for any questions you have.
Okay. Bill, any questions? All right, thank you very much. And now the applicant will go. Sandy?
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Sandy Young. My address is 3906 North Schreiber Way here in Coeur d'Alene. And I'm here today representing Jamie and Julie Kellner, property owners of the 53 acres of agriculturally zoned land that Amy just referred to. As she mentioned, the subject property is accessed off of Hauser Road, a publicly maintained road within the East Side Highway District's jurisdiction. And again, the site is contiguous to, but not a part of Hauser Ranch. This parcel is one of 3 remaining parcels of land on the east side of the lake that is zoned agricultural. The other 2, as Amy mentioned, as the crow flies, 3 miles to the north. The other is 8 miles to the south. An obvious indicator that ag zoning is out of place on the east side of the lake. Out of the hundreds of parcels on the east side of the lake, 3 are zoned agricultural. The subject property was previously used for cattle grazing, and it was a rural home site, not on this particular 53 acres, but in that area. The soils in this area of the county have always limited past uses. In fact, I met with the assessor's office this week to pull some historic appraisal reports. Here from the years 1949, 1968, and 1982. And I will submit them as an exhibit.
That'll be B 1002.
In 1949, June of 1949, the property's value was listed at $130. The assessor made a note that it is timberland only and that it's poor timberland. In October of 1968, we see the same report on the same amount of acreage, other than the value's gone up to $1,098. No ag use, only timberland. In 1982, again, timberland with a land value of $3,400. Ag was listed here, then crossed out by the assessor's office as not being viable ag land. And if you'd like a copy of that now, I can bring it up to you, or I can do it after the hearing. Now?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These reports are clear in that the property's never been used agriculturally. And as you know, the county's zoning map was adopted in January of 1973. I'd mentioned this at the last hearing, and I think it bears repeating. The soils at this site are classified as Dorb, Silt Loam, and Lacy Rock Outcrop Complex, according to the Soils Survey of Kootenai County, and that's basically the Bible that we use as planners in private industry as well as the county. It is the go-to for seeing what the viable uses are on a piece of property. It lists, and this is a quotation, "These soils are mainly used for woodland, recreation, and wildlife habitat, all uses that the Kellners wish to preserve. These soils limit timber production due to the large amounts of rock on the soil surface." Again, a quote. "And these soils prohibit crop production for that same reason." This is a site that's not conducive to timber production. It's not conducive to crops, and yet it's zoned agriculturally. The original Hauser family knew that. The soil science knows it. The Kootenai County assessor confirmed it. So why does the 1973 zoning map color this parcel green rather than orange? Amy mentioned that at that time, I believe it was the Streeters that owned it, and perhaps they had thought there could be an ag exemption potential, and that's why they wanted to keep it zoned as ag. That's merely conjecture, but it's the best I can do. This is an issue that the applicant is trying to correct. Steering now away from the zoning ordinance and moving on to the comp plan recognizes that colors on a map aren't always accurate. Therefore, it gives a broader guideline as to the highest and best use of the land. The comp plan designates this subject site and the surrounding area as country. Primary purpose of country: promote open space, promote rural residential development, and allow residential subdivisions with both residential and non-residential uses. This zone change request couldn't be a better fit for the country designation. As you know, a subdivision's only possible with a zone change from ag to rural, and the Kellners wish to subdivide, as Amy had mentioned, into 4 parcels. That application hasn't been submitted. It will stand on its own merits. A minor subdivision versus a major reduces the need to extend infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, over long distances. These home sites will be self-contained, requiring no public services. Protection of water quality and preservation of wildlife habitat and migratory corridors are supported with this request. 3 of the newly created 5-acre parcels will support rural residential development, while the creation of the 4th, as has been mentioned, will be included in a conditional use permit application for a golf course, a private golf course, not an extension of Hauser Ranch. That application also is yet to be submitted and will stand on its own merits. One more consideration of the country designation, and that is, that country designation is to promote economic activities that will minimize environmental impacts and don't require a full range of services. Again, to me, looking at this as a land use planner taking on this case, this couldn't be a better fit. A privately held golf course is just that, an economic activity compatible with the area, designed to minimize environmental impacts while permanently preserving green vegetative open space. The comp plan recognizes that non-residential uses may be established. It's clear in stating that these are only allowed at a scale that's commensurate with the character of the area. The Kellner's intent on this development couldn't be more spot on. Now, the zoning ordinance requires that we take 7 points and prove those out. So I have to give an answer to each one of these statements or questions. Number 1, the existing zoning and the date it became effective. The designation, again, dates back to January 3rd, when 1973, when Kootenai County adopted its first zoning ordinance. And again, there appears to be no logical explanation as to why this parcel is zoned ag and when it's surrounded by restricted residential and rural. It's never been used agriculturally. The nature of the proposed amendment, the applicant wishes to correct their zoning designation from ag to rural. The circumstances which justify the proposed amendment, this parcel has never supported agricultural uses. The rural zone, and I have this as a quote from the zoning ordinance, is a zoning district in which the land has been found to be suitable for rural residential use. That is the correct category. The proposed amendment promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare. Objective 1A of the comp plan is to foster rural and community character by encouraging open space and low intensity development. It doesn't say no development, it says low intensity. Objective 1B's goal is to foster existing rural communities and character by encouraging land uses that are consistent with existing development in the surrounding area. This request supports those 2 goals that were established to protect public and enhance the county as a whole. I think about the other uses in that area, Hutton Store, a golf course, the Worldmark Resort, which draws people from all over the world. Those are uses that are in commercial zones that are allowed there. This couldn't be more of a low intensity development as the rural zone purports. This request protects the property rights, values, and character of neighboring properties. The subject site is surrounded by restricted residential zoning, much more so than rural, and you can see that, of course, on this map. This request is compatible with and would not be injurious to the surrounding neighboring properties in that it proposes large lot development. 1 home per 5 acres versus 5 homes per 1 acre as allowed in the restricted residential zone. You have an opportunity to lock that in with the zone change and then, of course, when the subdivision's approved. The effects on the property owner if the request is not granted due to slopes, soil conditions, and a lack of market for harvesting of timber and livestock, or the cultivation of crops, the site cannot reasonably or economically be developed as agricultural land. This request, this is number 7, this request is not in conflict with the comprehensive plan. This request will bring the site more into conformance with the uses contemplated by the comp plan and the zoning ordinance. At present, this parcel is an island of ag-zoned land in a sea of rural and restricted residential. This request is not spot zoning. It corrects the existing spot zoning. This zone change will allow for residential development of 5-acre parcels in an area of the county where this is best suited. Zoning performance standards and site disturbance design review criteria will ensure that the development occurs in an environmentally sensitive, responsible manner. In reality, the Kellner's property will be held to a stricter standard than one that now exists. The conditional use permit process, the building permit process, site disturbance, subdivision, all allow the county as well as outside agencies to review and to regulate. In summary, there are residential as well as commercial uses in close proximity to this site. There are no viable agricultural uses in the vicinity of this property. The subject property's highest and best use will be found under the rural zone. In closing, site conditions support this request. The comp plan supports this request. The zoning ordinance supports this request. The hearing examiner, a land use attorney, provided a thorough legal analysis and gave it a thumbs up. And last but not least, your own staff supports it. I have nothing else.
Any questions for Ms. Young? Okay. All right, and then we have the applicants, and then we will get into the other comments. So, Jamie Kellner?
Hello, I'm Jamie Kellner, and that is my property. And I'm very lucky to have it. It's a beautiful piece of land with a lot of wildlife on it. And the last thing that I would ever do to it is overload it with houses. I want to have 3 5-acre lots total on the 53 acres of land. I don't know the process here very well, but whatever the rules are, we obey the rules, and I hope that you all will see that what my representatives have told you is the case and the truth. But we are not developers. We're not here to build a lot of houses and things. We only want to build 3 houses on 53 acres. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for him? All right. And Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie Kellner. As my husband said, we are unbelievably fortunate to live on that beautiful piece of property. It's magical. I've seen elk, I've seen moose, I see deer. It's just extraordinary. We have planted 50 additional trees so far. We maintain the property. We try and contain any kind of beetle infestation. We trim, we take down if necessary, and we replace. We never want to lose that magic. And so we don't want to be surrounded by people, a lot of people, where we can hear traffic and hear our neighbors. So I think if Discovery ended up getting that property, they'd build 50 homes on it. So to have 3 homes on it, I think would be the best use for it. And I thank you for listening, and I understand people's concerns because this is a beautiful place to live.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. All right, and then it also, Michelle Fulgham is also an applicant representative? Is that? You want to wait for rebuttal? Okay. Sure. All right, so now Deborah Stone wishes to speak and opposed.
My name is Deborah Stone. I live at 5321 South Freedom Lane, Harrison, Idaho 83838. I have submitted my written request that the Board of Commissioners affirm their July 14th, 2022 decision to make a material change of denial to the recommendation of the hearing examiner in this matter, and I hope you all have read it. The owners of the property in question knew or should have known the zoning status of the property at the time of their purchase. It had been agricultural since 1973. They also knew or should have known the zoning restrictions at the time of purchase. The Kootenai County Comprehensive Plan has as one of its objectives, as said before, but not incomplete, to foster rural and community character by encouraging open spaces, public resources, forestry, agriculture, and low-intensity development. You as commissioners should care about the beauty and nature in our county. You never hear anyone in authority talking about what a person needs to be happy and what uplifts the human spirit. Its beauty, and most beauty, comes from nature. If an idea is bad, it produces ugly things. The zone request is a bad idea given the proposed use of the land, and will uglify versus beautify. You should care about beauty. Beauty reminds you that most important things are eternal and unchanging. You can always recognize beauty. It's derived from nature and has balance, symmetry, and grace. Beauty is nature. If you destroy it with ugly ideas, you destroy not only its aesthetics and design, but its human relationships. Take into account that the east side of the lake is not comprised of ideas, but it is a physical place of beauty because of nature. Thank you.
All right, and Carleen Cada, opposed, may wish to speak.
Carleen Cada, 20621 South Highway 97, Harrison. Well, in past hearings, we've talked about the problems with Highway 97, and I don't want to go into that. The only thing I want to say is yesterday they did striping on the highway, and you can see where people are not staying within the lines now. I'm just opposed to the development on the east side of the lake, taking away our beautiful rural lifestyle. What the Kellner said was very encouraging, and I appreciate them planting trees and trying to keep the open space and taking care of the forest. But I'm concerned about water in the future. The Coeur d'Alene Press had a headline of exploding growth affecting Idaho water supply, and a subheading of some Kootenai County wells going dry. And I'm just concerned if they do put in a golf course, that this might affect wells in the area. And I know there are some people who have low gallon quantity on their wells as it is. I'm also concerned that in the future that they will sell property to Hauser Ranch, and I'm just so opposed to the high density growth that's going on the east side, contributing to all the traffic problems. And you talk about commercial, the only commercial in our area on this end of the east side is Hutton's. And all the other are private with Discovery and Hauser Ranch. And it just is very disheartening to see what's going on the east side. I think any further development, you need to take into consideration the beauty, as Deb talked about, of our area and the flourishing of our wildlife. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak either for or opposed on the Kellner hearing?
I would like to speak.
All right, and who do we have here?
I'm Bev Sloman. I live at 15143 South Asbury Road, Harrison, and I am very much opposed to this. When Ms. Young talks about it promoting country space, that is not more homes and a golf course. A golf course, they say, that is private. Private for who? Free homes? No. As it was already alluded to, Hauser is, by the grapevine, already in talks to purchase that. We don't need more concrete, more traffic, more noise. It doesn't help local wildlife. If the owners are so impressed with the moose and the elk and the deer, why are they putting in a golf course? Why are they putting in homes? Let it stay as it is, and it could be utilized agriculturally. If somebody wanted horses there, they could have a horse rental place with Hauser. There'd be a lot of people that would come over and rent horses. But a golf course should not be considered the same as green open space. That is not green open space. It's fertilized. It puts more chemicals in the land, which eventually reaches the lake. And we all know that the data is showing the lake is increasing in the amount of fertilizers and bad things that are creating the problems with the algae and with all the other lakes showing it. And our lake is showing it too. We're seeing it in some of the bays now. It will ruin the lake if we keep ignoring these subdivisions. It will be injurious to the neighboring properties due to the increased traffic, the noise, the use of the limited water, and especially watering a golf course when you've got homes that are up there getting, many of them, less than 5 gallons a minute. And they're worried from day to day sometimes during these droughts that they're not going to have water to cook or to live by. So it just seems terribly lopsided to consider this kind of use in a rural community that, as they said, is magical. Well, if they truly believe it's magical, keep it magical. Don't allow this zone change, because we all know where it's going, and they can pretend that it's not, but it will be further destruction of the rural community. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else online?
If there's anybody else on Zoom who wishes to speak, go ahead and do so.
Okay. Now, rebuttal time. And I think it's 10 minutes for rebuttal. Reba?
Keep my reading glasses handy here, just in case. I'm Michelle Fulgham. I'm a land use attorney here in Coeur d'Alene, 1317 East Front Avenue. And I'm representing the applicants here. By way of background, I understand your concerns. I watched the prior public hearing. Years ago, I sat where Pat Braden sits. I was the county land use attorney back when Commissioner Compton and Rankin and Panabaker were making these kinds of land use decisions. And we went through a lot of the same kind of analysis that you're focusing on. So I can see this from your side of things. What is important here, and what I've seen over the years in land use cases, is decisions can go awry and get off track when speculative evidence outside the scope of the application before you starts to drive the decision. And I'm worried that kind of erroneous getting off track is occurring here, because this is a zoning map amendment. It's an application under Kootenai County Code 8.1.405. It's a zoning map amendment. All that's being requested in this case, in this ZON 21-0002 case, is to change that map color from green to orange. That's it. That's it. It's a legislative determination. And the public agencies are uniformly in favor. The staff is uniformly in favor. The hearing examiner, every single criteria uniformly in favor and supports this. And so when we stick to the correct legal parameters of just analyze the zone change, it's clear. It's no longer ag. It needs to go to rural. That is unrebutted, uncontradicted, based on the relevant, applicable evidence in the record. It's only when we get outside the proper scope and start talking about things that are not appropriate to this specific zone change application. And we just heard it again with one of the opposition witnesses talking about the possibility of the future golf course. That's not a basis to deny the zone change. If there is an application for a golf course, that will be addressed in a CUP proceeding. It will have a new case number. It will have a new application. And everyone is concerned about water quality in the lake. Absolutely, we all want to protect the lake. That will be weighed, debated, analyzed, and the evidence submitted in the CUP. And nobody wants fertilizer and nitrogens going in the lake, and mitigation measures will have to be addressed and imposed in that CUP proceeding. It's really unfair to use that as a basis here to deny this, because the applicant hasn't even addressed that. The applicant hasn't put in their studies, hasn't put in their evidence, hasn't put in the mitigation that will protect the lake, because it's not appropriate to in a zone change. And so it's not fair to use that. It's a grounds for reversal, it's a grounds for error to impose future possible applications as a basis for denial now. Those will be fought, debated, weighed out in the CUP proceeding. This similar comment that the opposition witness made is in the grapevine that they've heard there's talk of sale to Hauser. No, we don't decide land use rights based upon things in the grapevine. That's not relevant evidence. That's not something. The Kellners have testified here without contradiction. They love this land. They're only going to do 4 lots and 5-acre parcels for 3 residences. Nothing in the record contradicts that. One of the opposition witnesses talked about concerns about water quality, that the golf course might take too much water and people that have low producing wells might be impacted. Again, that is a point to be addressed in a golf course CUP, not here. What this record before you, commissioners, says is that Panhandle Health, whose jurisdiction covers water and septic, is in favor. Panhandle Health has no water septic concerns with the zone change. Now we can bet if there is a subdivision application, if there is a CUP application, Panhandle Health will have something to say about that, and we'll address it and we'll debate it then. But the solid record before you on page 3 of the hearing examiner's decision, paragraph 1.12, on January 31st, Jay Loveland, on behalf of the Panhandle Health District, approved this zone change request. So no legitimate water quality concerns with the zone change. We'll deal with water quality concerns with the CUP much, much later. There were several witness statements put into the record today of neighbors surrounding the property who are in favor. And I urge you to look at those. I'm trying to find in my notes here which exhibits those were. I'm sorry.
1001.
1001. And one of the neighbors, Mr. Azoff, is immediately adjacent. Ustrowski. He's submitted a comment. He's touching the Kellner's property. A boundary sharing neighbor. You don't get much closer impact than that. Completely in favor. Completely supports this project. Azoff, he, Wolf, the others that are out in that area, the neighbors, support it. They think it would be a good addition to their neighborhood. And when you're abutting a property that's got a pending application and you support it, as Mr. Zrowski, that carries great weight. Highway 97 is a concern. The Highway District is not opposed. They're in favor of this zone change. Now, when and if there is a CUP application in the future or a subdivision application, and those cases have their own case number, then the Highway District likely will come forward and want some sort of mitigation, some sort of input. But for now, based on the evidence here, no objection from the East Side Highway District. Those will be weighted, analyzed, debated in the future in the CUP or the subdivision proceeding. So I mentioned there are some ways where cases get off track. One way cases get off track is when things are considered that are not pursuant to that application, these future uses. Another way cases get overturned where there's error, and I had such a case, it's called Ecrit versus Bonner County, is where there's a predetermined outcome, where if a commissioner takes the position of, I'm not going to approve anything on Highway 97, regardless of the application. And I think Commissioner Brooks might be leaning this way based on the prior comments of, I'm not going to approve any application on 97. I'm not going to approve anything out there. That's a predetermined outcome, and it's not based on the Highway District's evidence, the specifics of just the zoning map amendment. It's based on future uses. It's based on future applications. And that predetermined outcome could be an indicator of bias or some predisposition that causes cases to get overturned. And so we can't have that. We can't have that on the record. It has to be a full and fair hearing based on the specific application details. Not a blanket prohibition as a predisposed outcome before they're even heard. That's one way cases get overturned, and we need to stay away from that. So I've talked about areas we need to stay away from in terms of a predetermined outcome or a focus on factors that are not part of this application. What we do focus on and what makes for a solid, legally supportable decision pursuant to a petition for judicial review under Idaho Code is analysis of the county's factors. And the hearing examiner on page 8 did a great job of analyzing the Kootenai County Code factors. And Kootenai County Code 8.1.405 governs this proceeding. And there's 11 factors that you need to address. Every single one of those 11 factors weighs in favor of approval of the zone change. Okay, I'll wrap up. It would be a stark contradiction to come up with a different outcome than the agencies, the staff, and the hearing examiner based on these facts and based on these records. Are there any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With that, we can end public testimony and enter into deliberations unless you have any more questions of staff or anything like that. So, okay. Do you want to make a motion? Or?
Sure. I move that we enter into deliberations.
A second.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye. Okay. When I look at these things, I try to stick to just what's before us and not what can come in the future, because the future is completely unknown at this point. So looking at what the hearing examiner found and with the testimony provided, I do understand the concerns about growth on 97, but the applicant could have gone for restricted residential, but instead went for rural. And so I think this board has an opportunity to actually keep use down instead of, a more impactful zone change at this point. So once again, I'm still in favor of the zone change. This does not guarantee that any building permit, any CUP, anything in the future, including highway district access or anything, would be automatically granted. It'll go through public hearings, several of them. And so at this point, I think that the zone change is not only lawfully allowed, but probably a good idea in this case just because of the surrounding zoning.
Well, as far as myself, I haven't heard anything different than I heard the first time. And I would point out that my problems with 97 are not my future problems with 97. I know what's happening on 97 today. I see it. Anytime anyone drives down there, and it's atrocious, and it's dangerous. And if it were merely a function of checking the boxes, so-and-so, 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 therefore, whoever it is, we get what we want, we wouldn't need commissioners weighing in on this. There's a matter of judgment here. And my judgment is nothing's changed. So I'm still opposed to the change.
Is there a motion?
Why don't you make it?
I move that we approve zone 21-0002, which is Kellner zone change.
Bill Brooks.
He needs a second.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
What?
If you don't second it, we can't vote.
Oh, I'll second it. So
Bill
we can
Brooks.
vote. I wouldn't want that.
Bill Brooks.
No.
Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye. All right, so motion fails, unfortunately, and there are a couple different options for the applicant to have this reconsidered or challenged. So, Pat, am I missing anything, or are we ready for the next hearing?
A 1-to-1 vote is tantamount to a denial under Idaho Supreme Court case law, and therefore, it would move forward in that regard.
Yep.
I'm not even sure if an order of decision would be appropriate. I do think the applicants, would have the opportunity to request reconsideration. And if they wish, they can request that it be heard before all three commissioners. So I think for that reason, I think an order of decision would be appropriate, just reflecting the 1-to-1 vote and the fact that is tantamount to a denial, to allow the applicant to move forward with the request for reconsideration.
I would ask, Pat, where in the statute does it specifically say a motion for reconsideration would be in order?
That would be Idaho Code Section 67-6535, I believe.
Okay, you reviewed that recently?
And it's also in our, yes, and it's also our land use and development code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, we have concluded that case, and we're ready to move on to our next public hearing, which is ORA 21-0005, Hauser ACI Amendment. And Ben, are you leading us, or?
Could start with introductions, and then I assume Pat may have some additional information to weigh in. So thank you, Commissioners. Good morning again. Before you is an ordinance amendment to the Hauser ACI. Just for a little bit of history, In November of 2020, the county, in coordination with the city of Hauser, amended the previous ordinance, or the ACI agreement, to change the zoning and procedural changes to make the county have a little bit more oversight in the procedural permitting development standards. Beforehand, it was rather complex. Different applications were going to the city, some were staying with the county. The city staff, the county staff, both had problems understanding the actual agreement. So in 2020, we made some changes. The zoning in the ACI boundaries all changed to more traditional county zoning, as well as the procedural standards too. However, what did result is that there were some parcels that slipped through the cracks. And so this is more of a housekeeping matter than anything. What our intent here is to keep parcels that were eligible for development permits in the Hauser ACI standard before that change in 2020. We want them to continue to remain eligible for development permits. And so with those that have slipped through the cracks, that is what this purpose is, this proposed amendment, is to address those parcels to allow them to be eligible for permits. And so if there are any questions, or if Pat, if you would like to add anything to that, certainly would be willing to answer those.
I think Ben has summed it. Sorry, Commissioner. Anyway, I think Ben has summed up the reason for the amendment and what the amendment would do very succinctly, and I don't really have anything else to add to it except that I would recommend that it be approved.
Okay.
Ben, for the benefit of people listening or viewing, what's an ACI and what does it stand for?
Thank you. Yes, ACI.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, I was just going to say ACI is an area of city impact. It's an area that's still within county jurisdiction, but allows for the city's plans and concerns to be taken into consideration as to how that area is developed.
And who determines what areas are in the ACI?
That would be the county and the affected city jointly.
Okay, it's a joint. Okay, thank you. That clarifies a lot for a lot of people. Thank you.
Okay.
So Pat, I just have a question on section 6. Can you just put that in English?
Okay, that just means any action that was taken before the adoption of the ordinance can still continue after the ordinance is adopted.
Thank you.
It's what's known. It's what's known in the legal world as a saving clause.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So I think we're ready for public testimony.
Excuse me, Ben, do you have a map of the parcel that we're talking about? That to me was very instructive when you put it up there before.
Yes, if you give me a moment, I'll use this computer over here.
Are you looking for the Hauser ACI? While he's looking for that, by show of hands, who is here to testify on the area of city impact agreement with Hauser? Everybody's here for subsurface sewage? Okay. And maybe you can ask on Zoom, Ben, when you get there. Okay.
The only person on Zoom right now from the public is ATS, which I believe is Tiffany Espy. Do you have any comment on this, Tiffany? Or would you want to make some comment at the time, when the time comes?
right, sounds like
Okay.
not.
So I am just pulling up that map now. The area here that is not showing up in the zoning map is the area of the city, so the city boundaries itself. Let's see, the actual ACI boundary. Hopefully you can see that. So here, a little further north. Here are the boundaries, the further northern boundaries up here to the top, and then it extends to on the south side of Highway 53, there on the south then. So the boundaries of the ACI are typically, or as my mouse is kind of following there, over to the state line and back here to the east. So hopefully that helps for you.
It's not the same map, but never mind. It's, since there's nobody here
There
testifying
was a-
about it, it's not really a
Right.
problem. Let's just move on.
Okay.
All right, once again, anybody wish to speak regarding the Hauser Area of Impact Agreement? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion.
Okay, I move that we enter into deliberations on item 2 on our agenda, the Hauser ACI amendment.
Second.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye. Okay, any thoughts on this?
Nope.
It's
think
it's a cleanup
Simple thing to do.
ordinance, and I too am in favor. So would you like to make a motion?
I would move that we approve the amendment for the Hauser ACI or A 21-0005.
Second.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye. All right, that motion passes, and now we are ready for item 3, ORA 22-0002, which is subsurface sewage disposal. Say that 10 times fast. All right, and Mr. Qualls, is it?
Thank you.
Will be
Good
leading
morning.
us.
My name is Aaron Qualls. I'm with SCJ Alliance. We've been brought on to help support the Planning and Community Development Department in a couple of projects. I have a brief PowerPoint to bring up for you. This effort was initiated by the county with the ultimate purpose of protecting water quality, health and safety within the area of the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer it is a sole source aquifer for approximately 500,000 and growing people in the region. It covers approximately 200 square miles in Idaho, primarily within Kootenai County, and it's designated by the EPA as a sole source aquifer and designated in Idaho Code, IDAPA rules, as a sensitive resource aquifer. Basically, that means that its liquids move very easily through it, and that means that it's at particular risk for contaminants affecting water quality. Thank you. And it is part of the larger Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. Go down one here. Okay. The purpose of these ordinance amendments, it's, as you know, you've adopted a emergency ordinance back in March, which expires in just a couple of weeks, on September 25th. That emergency ordinance essentially affirms the rules that have been in place since the 70s by Panhandle Health District. So this really kind of affirms what has been practiced for decades, essentially. And I think that's a really essential point to this. So, and the purpose really ultimately is to, again, a long-term protection of the aquifer through density restrictions, which have been in place, unless connection to a sewer system is provided. And I'll go over the specific proposed language that, again, is really no change from what's been practiced. Additionally, there are also standards pertaining to health, safety, private property protection, and water quality that has also been in practice. And This really affects 3 different zones within the aquifer, and let me go back to the map. This map shows in the white areas all the cities, which would not be affected because those are all under a different jurisdiction. The blue area is showing the aquifer boundaries according to the USGS 1977 map, which is what has been, Panhandle Health District has been using since 1977. And then the other small colored areas would really be the affected zones. And that is high-density residential, restricted residential, and agricultural suburban. And the reason is because all of those zones have a minimum lot size of less than 5 acres. 2-acre minimums in the ag suburban, down to 8,250 square feet in restricted residential, and 3,000 square foot lot sizes in high-density residential. So this ordinance would affirm, again, what's been practiced for quite some time, which would require a minimum 5-acre parcel unless there's connection to a sewer system. That can be private, it can be public, but the intent is that subsurface sewage discharge does not occur in, concentrated areas that could dramatically affect water quality over the long term. These are some of the additional proposed text amendments, again, to protect private property rights, to health and safety and nuisances. And the other thing I would point out is that this also provides for joint authority for PhD and the county, so there's no real anticipated additional administrative enforcement issues on the county side. It really just kind of affirms practices, again, that have been in place. It also grandfathers parcels that have been created before December 20th, 1977. And as in part of your packet, we provided a consistency analysis with the comprehensive plan. Any zone change must be found to be in accordance with your comprehensive plan and not in conflict according to your code. We did this analysis, the attorney, Pat, reviewed it, and the Planning Commission also found that it was not only consistent in accordance, but supported by your comprehensive plan. The Planning Commission had 2 workshops, a public hearing on June 23rd, and recommended by a 6-0 vote of those present to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. The only thing I would add is that based on the testimony we received at the Planning Commission public hearing, there was suggestions of changing the aquifer boundaries, and that's something that certainly could be done in combination with best practices. That's not what this effort was agendized to do, or but it's something that certainly could be done later. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. How many public testimony did you have for the planning and zoning?
Boy, we had, I don't have the number of people that testified.
Yeah.
I didn't count them. It's in your packet. We had quite a bit and quite a lot of exhibits as well. Some robust studies of certain areas adjacent to the aquifer. Ben, or do we have a count of how many people testified?
Well, I guess, were a lot of people opposed to it, or?
No, we didn't have any opposition. And I believe people are here to speak for themselves. Today we had testimony from Panhandle Health District. We had testimony from neighbors adjacent to the aquifer who, and my takeaway was that really the testimony amounted to expanding the aquifer boundaries, which certainly could be done in combination with best practices and data. But that's all I will attempt to paraphrase of those who testified.
Okay. Yeah, I might have more questions later, but I think I'm good right now.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
thank you. All right. I think we will start with Panhandle Health, if that's all right. So Eric? And wishes to speak and is in favor.
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, my name is Eric Kellner. I'm the Environmental Health and Protection Division Administrator with the Panhandle Health District, here to speak in favor of this ordinance. Foremost, I'd like to thank this board for their continued support of the Health District and our efforts. But more specifically for today, for your swift and decisive action in putting in place this emergency ordinance, which largely does mirror efforts that the Health District has had in place. As this board is aware, the Health District has had a rule in place since 1978. The county's emergency ordinance, as well as their proposed permanent ordinance, it largely mirrors that effort. We have had recent challenges with our ability to, recent legislative changes have challenged our ability to both promulgate and retain rule, which is why we appreciate the efforts of the county. I think that Mr. Qualls did an excellent job of summarizing the situation, so I'm not going to repeat all of that. One of the things that I would like to touch on is the effectiveness of the rule. While it's one of many efforts to protect this water source, which is the sole source for over 130,000 Kootenai County residents, we do receive some funding from the county to have ongoing water quality of 28 wells that we look at 3 times a year. We've had recent assessment by hydrogeologists at the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality that have demonstrated we haven't seen any meaningful degradation of the water quality despite the substantial growth that the county has seen over the past 50 years. So there is certainly evidence that this is a meaningful and effective rule, and the Health District strongly supports the county's putting this into permanent status.
Okay. I have a question for you. I believe that one of the changes in the ordinance versus what the rule used to be was conservation subdivisions.
I do not believe that we addressed that that's addressed in the Panhandle Health District rule.
Okay, so I guess I was just...
Chairman Dunn.
Yes.
Chairman Dunn. Yeah, that is just a carry. That's actually in our current land use and development code. It's just a change in formatting to accommodate the other, the substantive change with regard to subsurface sewage disposal. So that would not constitute a substantive change to our current code.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if we're already allowed to do that, well, I didn't think we were. So Pat, maybe you can explain further here. I thought that if you had 20 acres and you wanted to put 4 homes on there, you cannot put all 4 homes on 5 acres and then leave the other 15 empty. Is that correct?
The way we've applied the
Could
rule,
do that as
Go ahead, Pat, and then I'll have Eric speak to it.
yeah, you could do that as through approval of a conservation subdivision, but that would be the only way you could do that.
Okay, and is
And
that...
then you would still, of course, the homes would still have to get approval from Panhandle Health District as far as their subsurface sewage disposal was concerned.
Okay.
the way we've applied the rules, you could theoretically do that. It's very rare. I don't think we've seen it happen. A lot of times, probably the most common example would be if someone has 10 acres and then they want to have a primary home and an accessory living unit. Those are probably the most common situation.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I think that's all my questions for you. Thank you. Do you have any? Okay. All right, and then we'll go to Bruce Edwards may wish to speak, and I can't, kind of both in favor and opposed are checked here, so.
I'll just hold my comments for now. I think that's
Okay. All right, Ann Edwards does not wish to speak, looks like opposed to the 5-acre rule.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, Oh, okay. Great. Okay, so then I guess I'll clarify. Mr. Edwards, are you in favor of the 5-acre rule?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I have Anissa Gamble. Anissa. Okay, and in favor or opposed?
In favor of the 5-acre.
Okay.
Hi, Commissioners. My name's Anissa Gamble. I live at 9263 West Michael Way on the south side of the Spokane River in the Greens Ferry Water District. I'm here today to reiterate the importance of protecting our sole source aquifer. I strongly support the county adopting the 5-acre rule. I'm in favor of the 5-acre rule for sure. I'm in favor of the 5-acre law to protect one of our most valuable resources, which is the Rathdrum aquifer and our drinking water. Without minimum lot sizes put into place, we jeopardize our most important resource, which is our clean drinking water. Millions of additional gallons of raw sewage will seep into our aquifer without the added septic tanks, if the 5-acre rule is not put into place, which will contaminate our wonderful drinking water and water quality. We believe that the south side of the Spokane River is also in jeopardy with continued growth and development. We feel we deserve the same protection and adoption of the 5-acre rule. The 2005 USGS map of the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer clearly shows the south side of the Spokane River within the Rathdrum Aquifer boundary lines. I guess I wonder why we are relying on old maps from the 1970s when there are updated maps clearly showing the correct boundaries of the aquifer, which includes the south side of that Spokane River. I encourage the county to revisit the 2005 USGS map of the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer and consider also putting into place a 5-acre ordinance within the south side of the Spokane River within the Greens Ferry Water District and its members. We are vulnerable to contamination of septic waste just like the north side if we don't have protection from all the continued high-density development. This is critical for the many users and citizens that depend on the clean aquifer. We need to protect our drinking water by putting into place the 5-acre rule. I look around at other states and other communities and realize the problems they have, such as a lack of available clean drinking water, no water for irrigation, and are on strict water restrictions. I have family members that come to visit from other states and sure appreciate the good drinking water we have here and the lush and green vegetation. Water that we all probably take for granted here in Kootenai County. Other states and communities aren't as fortunate as we are in Kootenai County. I have one sister unable to maintain a garden and keep it watered due to lack of water and strict water restrictions in her state. Is this how we want to live? Do we want our state to be like others and destroy our wonderful aquifer and precious drinking water? You all have families, I'm sure. Some of you may have young children, maybe grandchildren. I always get teary-eyed about this. This will jeopardize their health if we don't protect our water now.
Okay, sorry. I guess that's...
I want to protect my children's health and their future. We have the opportunity right now, putting into place this 5-acre rule that will help ensure and protect our children, our grandchildren, and the health and safety of so many. We have the opportunity to slow it down here, not to turn into other states and communities that we wish they would have some forethought into the future and protect their water. Please take this into consideration.
Okay, I have to...
Please, yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Dave Schultz?
Can I defer that till a little later?
Okay. Nadine Ferry wishes to speak. Are you in favor or against? Okay.
I have here a map from 1992 showing the aquifer, and it shows the entire Greens Ferry area is over the aquifer, so there's no reason to put more than one house per 5 acres. They've already said that the wells in the entire area have dropped in water level, and if you put more than one house per 5 acres, you're gonna deplete the water supply. The entire world is in a drought crisis. That means we're in a drought crisis, whether we believe it or not. And we can't just keep adding more and more houses to suck the water out of our aquifer, because that's going to put us all into a higher fire danger. It's going to just destroy our entire area. We need to make sure that we don't keep adding more and more houses to an area that can't sustain it in the future. And we're concerned about the quality of our water in the Greens Ferry area. They want to put 27 houses right over the aquifer that runs right down into our wells. If that's allowed, is the county, the health department, are they going to step up and find us new water? I doubt it. We need to make sure that there's only one house per 5 acres out there. Or in the entire county, as far as that goes. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Would you like to see the map that shows where the aquifer is?
We're not addressing the aquifer boundary today. We're just addressing the ordinance.
Okay.
So
I do believe that because this is over the aquifer, it should be the 5 acre rule.
okay, thank you. All right. Mike Ferry does not wish to speak, so I assume you're in favor of the 5 acre. Thank you. All right. Okay, I guess we're here to John Austin, wishes to speak and in favor.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Commissioners. John Austin, 3760 West Fairway Drive, Coeur d'Alene, representing the Green Ferry Water and Sewer District and the consulting manager for the district. I've been involved since 2002 with the district. We've seen a lot of growth out there. I know today's hearing is to in favor of the 5 acre rule for the aquifer, and we absolutely support that at Green Ferry Water and Sewer District. We would just like to go on record as asking, I believe there was a motion at the Planning Commission hearing in June to encourage the commissioners to work with other agencies to expand the boundary of the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer to include the Green Ferry Water and Sewer District's well site, which is located at 9191 West Michael Way. So I'm just here to let you know that the commissioners really appreciate your action on establishing the 5 acre rule for subsurface sewer, and would ask that you also include in your deliberations the action to move ahead with the redesignation of the boundary to include our well site. And with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm good. I don't have a question for you. Pat, I have a question for you. Whose jurisdiction is it for the aquifer boundary?
The aquifer boundary in terms of designation as a sole source aquifer was by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, and that was adopted back in 1977 and has not changed since then. I believe a rulemaking proceeding through EPA would be required for EPA to change its definition of the boundary. And with respect, it's also designated as a sensitive resource aquifer by the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, and it would be DEQ that would be the agency with jurisdiction to change that boundary. With that being said, at some point, if there's sufficient evidence backing it, we could change the zoning of any area that the county believes to be, within the boundaries of the aquifer for zoning purposes. I just don't think we have the scientific evidence, or alternatively, either EPA or DEQ recognizing that area as being part of the aquifer. I mean, it's certainly a recharge area. I don't think we have the scientific evidence yet that would back a decision by any agency that that area is, in fact, over the aquifer itself. So I would just recommend that we go forward as is, with the understanding that the boundary could be subjected to change, particularly expansion in the future. And I would also note that the Greens Ferry area is not the only area that's in this boat. There's also an area north of Hayden, basically between Garwood and to just past Silverwood, known as the Choco Channel aquifer. And there's been some debate as to whether that is actually part of the larger Rathdrum Prairie aquifer. So that could be the subject of a future expansion of the aquifer boundary as well.
Okay, thank you. And I think that they're already zoned rural, so they can't do more than 1 per 5 acres anyway. So even though they're not designated over the aquifer.
I believe that's generally correct, aside from the site of the Choco Mill.
Yes, very familiar with that area. All right, thank you, Pat. I will have some more questions on the ordinance itself once we get through the public hearing part of it. So Robert Steiger wishes to speak. In favor? Okay.
I hate to disagree with God that's speaking from this facility, but I do. My name is Robert Steiger. I'm on the board of the Green Ferry Water District. I have a PhD from the University of Idaho. My field is computational fluid dynamics or hydrodynamics. I've spent a lot of time working on geothermal aquifers. You're right, the Spokane River Rathdrum Prairie aquifer is the way it's normally referred to, because that aquifer affects drinking water for about 500,000 people. So it's not just in the county; it's what we're leaving going out of the county. So this report that we've been talking about was generated by the United States Geological Survey, the Idaho Department of Water Resources, and also from the Washington State Department of Ecology. So, and this particular report shows the aquifer different than the original designation. So I think what we're here to ask you for is to please take that on. So this place is the Spokane River Rathdrum Prairie aquifer is known for its high transmissivity. That means that water travels fast under the ground in normal speed. There are some places off to the south of the Spokane River that are connected to that reservoir. And they're the same kind of geological surface. One of those is the area where we have our wells. So and we're lucky we have sweet water, 150 foot deep, and a fair amount of it because we're fed from the aquifer. However, most of the Spokane River is just south of the river is rock. So the area around our water district is a part of the mountain area. It's a different kind of reservoir. It's a fractured reservoir. It's got different minerals in it and a lot of iron, and it's not very reliable. So our little district impacts a much larger district in that area. So what the outcome of this is we sit in a fan of good transmissivity that we can be affected by. So we have run water tests on our wells, and one of the guys from a fellow by the name of Daniel Sturgis, who's a groundwater hydrologist, did notice that the Kootenai influence is on the north side of the river, which is evidence, technical evidence, scientific evidence of where we're attached to that aquifer.
All right.
And so we would like to be included in that boundary, and ask you to please, take that on sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Because we have about over 1,000 people, 12,000 people, 1,200 people We're
Thank you.
dependent on that water.
All right. All right. Jane Morgan wishes to speak. And are you in favor of the rule?
Were you able to hear Mr. Steiger as clearly? Were you able to hear his important message? We think that's the most important message of all. I am Jane Morgan, Riverview Drive, Post Falls. I'm one of hundreds of concerned Green Ferry stakeholders who treasure and depend upon Green Ferry Water and Sewer District wells for our sole source water. In the last 30 years, 3 regulatory agencies in Idaho and 2 federal agencies have published documentation showing that these Green Ferry wells are completed in the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. The latest research by both the U.S. Geological Survey and the Idaho Department of Water Resources confirms that our wells and the vacant area south of those wells lie within the actual SVRP aquifer boundary. The ordinance that we are discussing at this hearing today is marvelous and necessary, specifically for safeguarding the SVRP aquifer drinking water from dangerous high septic tank density. And we thank you for it. But this ordinance, we feel, is mortally defective because of one sentence that deprives the 2, soon to be 3, Green Ferry wells of the 5-acre rural protection simply because they lie just a few meters south of the ancient, inaccurate, and unrealistic 1978 aquifer boundary, which even the Environmental Protection Agency and the USGS, which drew the old boundary, have updated in their various publications. In the modern age, no community should have to beg for safe, clean water. But our Green Ferry Water community delivered to your offices this week a binder with our community petition signed by many anxious people who ask you, the board, to, regardless of today's hearing, find a way to grant the Green Ferry wells equal protection under the new 5-acre rule ordinance. Along with our petition, we included compelling evidence that our wells and our community are entitled to this protection. As you know, we are very concerned about the vacant 28 acres that lie directly over groundwater just to the south of our pumps. Without 5-acre rural protection for our wells, that acreage could soon become home to a high-density septic tank farm, while the groundwater directly underneath that development is as shallow as approximately 100 feet in summer months during runoff.
Okay, finish your thought, please. Just wrap it up. Your time is up.
The soil above this shallow pond is so porous and permeable that it's millions of annual.
Okay, so I meant put a conclusion on it, not keep going. So we still have a few people that need to speak, so.
We got to stop when that buzzer goes off. You got to wind it up and move
I
on.
see.
Yeah.
Our community will never be satisfied, will never rest until we are guaranteed equal 5-acre rural protection per the ordinance we are discussing today. Thank you for hearing us.
Thank you. And I just have one question for you. Have you submitted this to the Aquifer Protection District Committee?
We have reached out to them and they have never replied.
Okay. All right. Peter Stoth, it looks like, does not wish to speak but is in favor. Okay. And Valerie, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that right. Is it Stahl? Stoll, sorry. Valerie Stoll in favor, does not wish to speak. And Jim, oh boy, say that for me. Toynbee, thank you. Does not wish to speak and is in favor. All right, Rebecca Wall may wish to speak in favor. Would you like to? Okay, so then I just have Dave Schultz. So,
Okay, my name is Dave Schultz. I live at 5552 West Highland Drive, Coeur d'Alene. My background is I'm retired, but I was a capital program manager for the city of Coeur d'Alene's wastewater utility for 28 years. I'm going to just read this off to get to 3 minutes. Our water community's interest for protecting Green Ferry water from septic system pollution has been ongoing for at least 4 years. Now, IDEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, has been coaching the water district for 20 years to protect their wells from pollution due to septic tanks in several years. I wanted to interject here. I've noted that I am opposed to this particular process. I'm not opposed to the 5-acre rule. I mean, that's the best thing ever. And it's very, very important. And again, I'm now encouraging you to follow your planning and zoning people's requests that in consideration this, you know that they really want you as a board to endorse your staff to find some way of trying to solve this problem that's been ongoing for many years. This is the first time now that your board in a long time has had the opportunity to hear directly any public testimony regarding this. We don't know what your staff has told the board, but your staff and every other government agency concerned in this area has been provided with reams of detailed evidence regarding why the Greens Ferry wells are in jeopardy if the allowed zoning continues around the adjacent wells. Now, since before 2018, it's been brought to the attention of your staff that the wells are pulling from the Spokane Valley Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer, and that the wells need protection with the 1 septic per 5-acre rule. And for 4 years, to my knowledge, every agency in the area that's responsible for that protection has claimed that nothing can be done without legislative action to amend the legal boundary that Panhandle Health District has clung to so ferociously. It seems like each and every protection agency is willing to risk contamination of the wells rather than use any of their powers to correct a mistake in zoning or update the mapping with new aquifer boundary understanding that's been in place for more than 30 years. While most of the agencies seem to lend a sympathetic ear, not one agency other than the Department of Water Resources has announced any concrete intention of solving the problem. Although the Department of Water Resources has come right out and emphatically stated the wells are drilled into that SBRP aquifer, they're seemingly unwilling to interfere in DEQ's responsibility for protecting the water quality. DEQ, on the other hand, has been reviewing a hydrogeologist's efforts to use a modeling study to determine if a certain number of septic tanks will ultimately pollute the wells.
Okay, so just one
Wrap it up.
conclusion, one concluding
2
sentence.
years, 30 years, 40 years have gone by. We've tried our best as a community of petitioners. There's 200s of people. There's the aquifer or the water board. They're concerned about this particular problem. And that one agency, and we're appealing to you now as a last-ditch effort to get something going, to make something concrete happen. That's what your planning and zoning people wanted you to do. I don't know if your staff presented that to you that way. Your minutes that you had for this hearing from planning and zoning were really, really shallow with what really happened in last hearing.
All right,
Thanks
thank you.
Excuse me, Leslie.
Yes.
When people go over their time without regard to the buzzer, they take away from other people. And that's just, to me, not okay.
Well, I'm sorry for doing that, but it's pretty important.
But a number
Sure.
of people have done it, not just you.
Sure.
That means stop or wrap it up.
Which I just did.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Rebecca, did you want to speak? Well, come. You have your 3 minutes. And you are in favor.
Hello, Michelle. We have so many people out there
Speak up.
who need your help.
we need our clean water. We can't allow other industries or other places to take that away from us. I think it's our duty as an area or a state or whatever, we have to make sure that we take care of not just these people, but everybody. Because if that goes into the aquifer, that goes down further. And we all know that there are so many people dependent on this, that we as an area, or whether we as a district, or whether we as a state, it's our duty to make sure that we protect all of this. And I feel like by us, and I took off work today to be able to come here and listen to this and make sure that the case was stated so that all of you, I know that you are representing much more than what you stand up here to represent. And it's important that all of us make sure that we are taking care of each other. I also want to say that it's been our house where we live, and not only our house, but like 4 or 5 houses all together. I want to just say that we have to be careful because we have a water issue at our home, and many times when we have a lot of runoff, we are in trouble of flooding, and we have to put our own pump out there. And my point here is that Panhandle Health District ended up approving some houses in that area, and that probably shouldn't have been. And that, I know that is a different issue, but all I'm saying is we deal with that issue on a daily basis. And when spring comes and the runoff comes, we have to deal with something that you don't know if your home's going to be safe. And actually, I know that we've had someone actually confirm that, and we've had the Corps of Engineers out there 4 different times, and they've told us that those other houses should never have been placed there. I don't want this to happen in this situation. I don't want us to come back to here, to this situation, and say, we had the opportunity to stop this, and we chose not to. So I'm asking you, please, approve it. Thank you.
All right, anybody else wish to speak? Sir, you need to come up to the podium if you're going to speak. You need to come up to the podium if you're going to speak.
Can I speak?
No,
up to the
here.
podium, please.
Yeah.
Just real.
And just state your name.
My name is Michael Ferry. My wife's Bill Ferry. Live at 585 South Kelly Road in Greens Ferry Terrace area. Okay. My wife had a map here. It plainly states that where we live at Greens Ferry Terrace is over the aquifer. Okay, this map was redated back to 1992. Okay, it's signed off on the very back. It was put out by Idaho Department of Health and Welfare, Division of Environmental Quality, Panhandle Health District, and it was produced by the Environmental Protection Group. This gentleman over here brought up that it was where we're at is the Spokane Valley Rafter Prairie Aquifer. It would not be a change in aquifer boundaries. We're already inside of that. I think you folks are given a copy of this map. And if you haven't got it, I've got this one right here. I'll get you some copies of it. And a dotted line shows where the aquifer is. And that shows that we are definitely inside Spokane Valley Rafter Prairie Aquifer. So you're in favor of the 5?
Oh, yeah, definitely in favor of the 5-acre rule. They want to put 57 houses on a field behind our place, Bill, and 27 acres. As Penny stated, we are just very, very close to that area with our wells. Okay, now they plan on drilling another well down there, a 3rd well. The first 2 wells get contaminated.
and the third one is would be contaminated too. Where do we drill our wells to get our drinking water for our district? Very good. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. All right, last call. Anybody else? Ma'am?
I'm Valerie Stoll, and I live directly on the corner adjacent to it. And I don't care to have 57 houses. I plan on living here for another 20 years, and I don't want to have to be dealing with this. We've lived here 26 years, and this has been an ongoing issue for the last, I'm going to say 10 issues. Too many houses, too many septic tanks, too shallow, and I don't care to have it. And I also have 2 parcels, so do we get another 2 votes for, should we fill out another slip because we are in the favor of the 5-acre rule? Do we get 2 extra votes?
Yeah, it's not a voting process.
We're not voting.
Fill out 2 more slips? Is that going to make a
You
difference?
can, but no, it won't.
Okay, well, anyway, don't care to have it.
Yeah.
We heard
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Okay,
We
so,
have just one person on.
on Zoom? Okay.
And so ATS, I believe it's Tiffany Espy. Tiffany, do you have anything to say? I know you don't have a microphone to speak, but if you had a written comment, go ahead and do so at this time.
All right, and while we're waiting for that, she does not. Okay. Pat, so I do have some questions on the ordinance and about the map and everything. Would you prefer I ask them before we enter into deliberations?
I think since there's no more public comment, I think it'd probably be appropriate to go ahead and close public testimony and enter into deliberations, and then you can go and fire away.
Thank you. Motion.
Fire away, okay. I would move that we close public testimony and enter into deliberations.
Second.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye. All right, so now we are in deliberations, which means we can communicate with staff, but the public has had their opportunity to speak. Question to Ben, because apparently I didn't find it in my information. What year map is being used to determine the boundaries, and why this Greens Ferry issue?
1977 USGS.
Okay, and so this gentleman talked about a 1992 map, or in the 90s. So is that, where does that map fall?
I don't know where that map falls. This effort has essentially the USGS 1977 map is the map that Panhandle Health District has been using since 1978.
Okay.
So this effort has been essentially just to affirm those existing rules. And that map is also used by the EPA and DEQ.
Okay, thank you. All right, now going into, yes, go ahead, Pat.
I just wanted to add to what Mr. Paul stated. The change to the definition of the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer tracks what has been in Panhandle Health District rule since 1977 when they first adopted it. So it would not constitute a change to what that Panhandle Health District rule had stated.
Okay. All right, let's see. Actually, I think I'm, got that. Sorry, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. All right, so Pat, I'll ask you, it's Article 7.3, subsurface sewage disposal, and I think it's part of the ordinance. If I go to under 87302, Section C, number 1, it says all installations of subsurface sewage disposal systems must be made in compliance with applicable DEQ and Panhandle Health District number 1 PhD rules. So does that mean they're internal rules, or was this reference the old rules?
It would reference any any rules that Panhandle Health District has adopted that are in effect at that particular time. Just parenthetically, even though Panhandle Health has lost their authority to make rules under the IDAPA process based on the recent legislative changes, I happen to believe, and I'm not Panhandle Health's attorney, but I happen to believe that they still have their own inherent rulemaking authority. Whether they choose to exercise that or not, of course, is up to them in consultation with their legal counsel. But should they adopt valid rules that govern this issue, then this would require them to be followed.
Okay, thank you. And then number 2, does that still allow for what Mr. Kettner testified to for the additional dwelling unit, accessory living unit? Does that take away that ability?
No, that doesn't change anything. That is actually an exact or nearly an exact replication of the former Panhandle Health District rule.
All right. And then item number 5, is that also a direct replication?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then I think, Ben, you had given to me, there's approximately 300 parcels that this was going to affect, something like that. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to look them up.
Yeah, I think that there are, here's the map here that you can see, and
Right.
there are parcels that would be affected that are less than 5 acres that are, as Panhandle Health District, again, has previously recognized, if they were established before 77, and they would continue to be eligible for that use, as well as those that would be replacing an existing approved system. So.
Okay.
And the only additional comment I would make is that most of the parcels that would be affected are also within areas of city impact, with a couple of fairly sizable exceptions, including the Twin Lakes area and a smaller area in Bayview. But for the most part, they're in or at the very least near existing areas of city impact.
Right, which gives them the opportunity to hook up to city sewer instead of using septic. So, okay.
Yeah, or like in Bayview's case, it could be a sewer district.
Right, right. Okay. So those are all the questions I have. Bill, do you have any?
I just don't think there's any question that the people in this room and the vast majority of people are in favor of this ordinance. On the other hand, I think it's very important that we do everything we can to protect the aquifer and expand that to the accurate boundaries. And I think it's beyond where they are today. I don't have a way of knowing that, but that's a different question, a different hearing. But that's all I have.
Yeah. And so I would say the first place to start would be Aquifer Protection District, because they have connections with all the existing agencies. And if any new map were to be developed, I think that would be the starting place for them to do that. So yes, I am in agreement. Want to make sure that the best possible boundary information is used. But once again, today, we only have jurisdiction over this ordinance and not able to change the map here as county commissioners. So at that point, I am in favor, of course. And so would you like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve ORA 22-002 subsurface sewage disposal.
I think there was an extra 0 in there, 0002. And
Didn't pick up my glasses.
And I
Okay.
would second that.
Bill Brooks.
Aye.
Pro Tem Duncan.
Aye. All right, and the ordinance is now, has the effect of law in Kootenai County. So thank you all very much for coming, and I appreciate your work, Mr. Qualls.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, and it is 10:54, and this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, Pat.